Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. Success don't come from luck, and it sure don't come from wishing. You can sit on your couch and dream all you want, but if your daily habits don't line up with that dream, you're just taking a nap with your eyes open. Momentum isn't a gift, it's something you earn. You earn it by showing up every day, not once a week, not when you feel inspired, every single day. That alarm clock you ignore, that's where the momentum begins. That book you said you'd read, that workout you keep skipping, that skill you were supposed to practice, those are the small things that build your runway. And let me tell you, no plane takes off without a runway. That's what habits do. They build your foundation so when opportunity knocks, you're not scrambling to prepare, you're already in motion. Small daily habits are like compound interest. You don't see the benefit right away. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything. You go to the gym today and tomorrow you still look the same. You study for an hour and still feel behind. You wake up early and it still feels like you're dragging. But if you keep at it, just keep stacking those days, you start to build a rhythm. And then the rhythm becomes routine. And then suddenly, what once felt hard becomes automatic. That's momentum. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to change one thing and do it every day. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier. Maybe it's reading 10 pages a day. Maybe it's putting your phone down at dinner. The habit doesn't have to be big, it just has to be consistent. People wait for the perfect moment to start, the right time, the right mood, the right motivation. But success doesn't care about your mood. Success responds to movement. If you can push through when it's boring, if you can show up when it's inconvenient, you're building something powerful. You're training your mind and body to follow through even when nobody's watching. Momentum doesn't show up with fireworks. It shows up in the silence, in the grind, in those days when you feel like quitting but don't. Every great success story is just a long string of daily disciplines. That's it. No magic, no secret formula, just simple habits done over and over until the results are too loud to ignore. Your habits shape your hustle, and your hustle shapes your future. Most people want to change their life, but they never stop to change the small things they do every day. They think the big dream alone will carry them, but dreams without discipline are just fantasies. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are, and who you are determines how you show up in the world. If you build lazy habits, you build a lazy hustle, and a lazy hustle produces a lazy future. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. You don't get to skip the process. You don't get to grind once a month and expect long-term results. The habits you choose, whether they're built on discipline or distraction, shape everything about the way you operate. If you get used to making excuses, you'll make them your lifestyle. If you get used to quitting when things get tough, then tough times will always beat you. But if you build a habit of showing up even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, then that mindset starts fueling your hustle. You stop waiting for motivation and start relying on momentum. The hustle, the energy and effort you bring to your goals, doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It grows from the small things you train yourself to do. Waking up early when you want to sleep in. Staying late to finish the work when others clock out. Practicing your craft when no one is clapping. All of that is habit. And those habits become your edge. They become your rhythm, your drive, your hustle. You stop chasing success and start attracting it because you're putting in the kind of consistent effort that average people avoid. Success doesn't respond to random effort. It responds to patterns. And when your pattern is built on solid habits, the habit of pushing through, the habit of staying focused, the habit of improving daily, your hustle starts to look different. People notice it. You start to stand out not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because excellence becomes your standard. That kind of hustle doesn't burn out because it's not based on hype. It's built from habits that feed it every day. And then that hustle starts to shape your future. Doors start to open, not because of luck, but because your preparation met opportunity. People start calling you gifted or lucky, but what they're really seeing is years of work made visible. Your future, the life you want, is waiting on the other side of your daily choices. If you want to level up, don't just talk bigger, train better. Start with the habits, because they're writing your story before anyone else reads it. You can't have millionaire dreams with minimum wage habits. That's the kind of truth that stings a little, but it needs to be said. Everybody wants the good life. They want the money, the freedom, the success, the respect. They picture the cars, the vacations, the big house, and the applause. But when it comes time to do the work, to live with discipline, to wake up early, to study longer, to outwork the excuses, they disappear. Dreams don't come true just because you want them. They come true because you build a life that's strong enough to hold them. You can't live average and expect extraordinary. The level of your habits has to match the level of your ambition. If your goal is big, your grind has to be bigger. You can't talk like a boss, but live like a bystander. Millionaire dreams require millionaire habits, and not just in your wallet, but in your mindset, your discipline, your focus, your time. If you're still making choices like someone who's surviving day to day, you never go build a life of someone who's thriving year after year. Think about it. If you spend your mornings scrolling instead of planning, if you waste your evenings binging instead of building, if you break every promise you make to yourself, how do you expect to win? How do you expect to be trusted with more when you're not even managing what you got now? Success doesn't reward potential, it rewards preparation. And preparation shows up in your habits, not your height. You can't wish your way into wealth. You can't hope your way into high performance. You can't pray for success while practicing procrastination. Faith without works is dead, and dreams without discipline are empty. You've got to live like you already believe your vision is real. That means investing your time like it matters. That means turning down distractions. That means getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because growth doesn't come from ease, it comes from effort. If you act broke in your habits, lazy with your time, careless with your words, undisciplined in your routine, you're going to stay broke in your results. This isn't about money alone, it's about mindset. Millionaire habits mean you think long term, you move with intention, you stay consistent. You don't chase the quick win, you build a foundation that leads to lasting impact. You show up whether you feel like it or not. You keep promises to yourself. You don't need a manager to tell you what to do, your mission leads you. So if your dreams are big, your habits better match. You can't drive a dream on empty effort. You can't talk about greatness and live in laziness. If the goal is to rise, then your habits have to rise first. Your future is only going to grow as high as your daily routine allows. Discipline today pays dividends tomorrow. It may not feel like it in the moment, but every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're making an investment, not in the world's economy, but in your personal growth account. Every time you wake up early, every time you push through a workout, every time you choose to study instead of scroll, you're planting seeds. You don't see the harvest right away, but the seeds are there under the surface, working. Just because it's not visible doesn't mean it's not valuable. The payout may be delayed, but the reward is always waiting on the other side of consistency. Discipline is that quiet force that separates winners from wishers. It doesn't show off. It doesn't post selfies. It just shows up and does the work day after day. People don't like to talk about discipline because it doesn't feel good. It feels hard. It feels lonely. It means saying no when you'd rather say yes. It means staying in when others go out. But that temporary discomfort leads to permanent growth. While everyone else is living for the moment, discipline is building for the future. People want success, but they want it on their schedule. They want results without resistance. But life doesn't work that way. You don't get the blessing without the burden. You don't get the win without the work. When you choose discipline, you're telling your future that it matters more than your mood. You're choosing legacy over laziness. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. That alarm you ignore every morning, that's your opportunity to get ahead. That task you keep putting off, that's your chance to grow. Discipline doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and you have to be wise enough to listen. Every disciplined decision is a deposit in your destiny. You may not feel it today, but tomorrow will show it. The person who reads one chapter a day ends up reading a library. The person who saves a little every paycheck builds a fortune. The person who practices a skill a few minutes daily becomes a master. It's not about big dramatic changes. It's about small, faithful ones, day in. And make no mistake, there are dividends. There is a return on your investment. When you're disciplined today, you walk into tomorrow with confidence, with momentum, with strength. You're not scrambling because you're prepared. You're not panicking because you've already paid the price in practice. Discipline gives you an edge, and it builds a version of you that can't be shaken. The kind of you that doesn't break under pressure. The kind of you that doesn't beg for opportunity, but attracts it. That's the power of discipline. It may not look like much in the short term, but long term, it pays more than you can imagine. Winners don't rise to the occasion. They fall back on their habits. It sounds bold, maybe even a little cold, but it's one of the rawest truths in the game of life. When pressure hits, when the lights are on, when everything's on the line, you don't suddenly become someone new. You revert to the person you've trained yourself to be every single day. It's not the big moment that defines you. It's the small ones, the daily ones, the ones no one sees. That's what champions are built. People love the idea of rising to the occasion, that magical surge of performance when it really counts. But that's not real life. That's a movie script. In reality, when things get hard, when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, you go back to what's familiar. You fall back on your training, your mindset, your habits. If you've trained yourself to cut corners, that's what you'll do. If you've trained yourself to push through, that's exactly what will come out under pressure. Pressure doesn't create character, it reveals it. Every time you practice discipline when it's inconvenient, you're training for a future you haven't met yet. Every time you choose structure over sloppiness, every time you follow through on what you said you'd do, you're building a reflex. And when life throws chaos your way, and it will, you don't need to panic. You'll fall back on what you've built. That's why habits matter. Because the pressure moment doesn't give you time to prepare. It demands a response. And only the ones who've prepared in advance know how to respond well. Winners don't get lucky in the moment. They're ready for the moment because they've already done the work. You can't fake strength you didn't build. You can't fake calm under fire if you've never trained your mind. You can't fake excellence when all you've practiced is average. That's why habits are everything. They're the rehearsal for your future reality. You're not just going through the motions, you're setting the standard for who you become. Success is a system, not a spurt. It's not about flipping a switch. It's about building a foundation. Winners understand that. They know game day is just a reflection of every day that came before it. And when it's time to perform, they don't hope for a miracle. They trust their muscle memory. They lean on their routine. They don't panic because they've already been there in their discipline. And that's what separates them. Not the talent, not the spotlight, but the habits that no one else sees, that no one applauds, that no one posts about. So when the storm comes, and it always does, winners don't flinch. They fall back on their habits, and that's exactly why they win. Consistency beats talent when talent ain't consistent. It's one of the hardest lessons for naturally gifted people to learn, and one of the biggest advantages for those who are willing to outwork the rest. Talent is flashy. It turns heads. It opens doors. But talent alone doesn't guarantee success. If you can only perform when you feel good, if your effort depends on your mood, if your results rely on perfect conditions, you're already behind. Because while talent shows up when it feels like it, consistency shows up regardless. There are people with half your skill set getting twice the results because they made a decision to be relentless. Not perfect, not always motivated, but relentless. They put in the work even when no one is watching, even when the excitement is gone, even when the results are slow. That's the kind of person who wins in the long run. Because no matter how gifted you are, if you're not dependable, consistency is the trait that builds trust with others and with yourself. And trust is the real currency of success. Think about the gym. The naturally athletic person who works out once a week won't outperform the average person who shows up 5 days a week for a year. The person who writes one great sentence and quits won't publish a book, but the one who writes daily, even if it's rough, will. It's not about being the best once. It's about showing up again and again, getting better over time, and refusing to quit. That's what builds momentum. And momentum always outpaces raw ability to sit still. People who rely on talent alone tend to crash when they hit resistance. They haven't trained themselves to push through when it's boring, painful, or messy. But consistent people, they've already been in the grind. They know how to keep moving forward when the thrill wears off. They've built a rhythm, and in that rhythm, they find results. They don't get distracted chasing hype. They stick to the process. They show up when it's not exciting, when no one's clapping, when progress feels slow, and they do it again the next day. Talent is a great head start, but consistency is the fuel that finishes the race. You'll see people with less natural ability climbing higher, getting further, not because they're better, but because they're consistent. They didn't stop when it got hard. They didn't fold under pressure. They didn't ghost their goals when motivation ran out. They built habits. They embraced repetition. They trained discipline like a muscle. And eventually, they passed up everyone who relied on talent alone. Success doesn't ask how talented you are. It asks how consistent you've been. Because in the end, consistency wins the war that talent can't finish.